This is A New Angle, conversations about how we're doing and where we're going. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by the Headwaters Foundation, First Security Bank, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. As part of Climate Solutions Week here at Montana Public Radio, I'm speaking today with Devin Morales, the founder of Cool Earth Creamery, a plant-based creamery committed to sustainability and local agriculture. Devin established Cool Earth in 2019 after a 25-year career in natural resources and engineering. Devin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So tell us, where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
Yeah, so I come from a multi-ethnic family.
Okay.
My mother was born and raised in Texas, but she comes from Irish immigrants, and my dad is from Santiago, Chile. We moved around quite a bit. I've spent most of my life up in the Pacific Northwest, up in the Portland area, Willamette Valley, Portland, Corvallis, Eugene.
And what brought you to Missoula?
So I was offered a job here with one of the land management agencies.
Yeah. So I mentioned that 25-year career in natural resources and engineering. Just summarize your career before Cool Earth. What were you up to?
Sure. So shortly before I left, or I stopped, I ended my career with this land management agency. I was the program lead for geotechnical services, dams, tunnels, pavements, and materials.
Yeah.
And so, I did just a diversity of different projects. I worked on everything from things like wetland restoration, fish passage, landslide stabilization. So for the last few years of my career, was primarily focused on dam decommissioning.
Okay.
So I was looking at some of our older dams on the landscape that had sort of moved beyond their useful life, but still presented a hazard. So we had to look at taking them offline, and then not just sort of removing the hazard, but leaving it better than we found it. So that involved a complete restoration package along with the decommissioning component.
Okay, so how does this map on to making plant-based dairy, or plant-based ice cream and drinks and other things like that? It doesn't seem like you maybe had that on your bingo card in the earlier part of your career. Yeah,
no, I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to own and operate a plant-based creamery.
Yeah.
What I think how I got to this point was, like I said, I've been in the natural resources conservation engineering field for over 25 years. And I feel like what that gave me was a sort of front row seat to climate change and how climate change was impacting the built environment. And for example, so in 2005, when I was deployed to Hurricane Katrina, I was with the Army Corps of Engineers at the time.
Yeah.
And I was deployed to Katrina on the Mississippi coast. And where I actually landed was in an area, and this was all along the Gulf Coast. It was completely wiped out. So, I recall seeing grandmothers picking through rubble, looking for some kind of artifact of their life before the storm.
Yeah.
I worked with contractors who saw those same piles of rubble and only saw dollar signs.
Oh, like just what they could salvage out of the
Exactly.
material?
The money they were going to get for the cleanup effort.
Oh, got it.
And then I was moved to the cleanup effort in 3 counties just above the Mississippi, or just above the Louisiana border, right in Mississippi. And I spent a total of 4 months there. And after that experience, I came back, and my supervisor had asked me, and I was working for the Corps of Engineers in the Portland, Oregon area. And he had asked me, so what did you think about it? And I said to him, honestly, I never wanted to work another disaster again. It was just too much. And about 16 months later, I got an assignment to Northeast Afghanistan, working on a small provincial reconstruction team.
Okay.
And the assignment was, you would go and build schools, roads, clinics, wells, microhydro systems. And I thought, this sounds like a great assignment. Yes, it's a war zone, but at least I won't have to deal with a climate issue, or so I thought.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I got there, what I clearly saw was a country, and obviously, at the time, it was over 30 plus years of a country at war, of conflict, of a lot of ethnic strife between the different tribes within the Afghan within the country. But you were also seeing issues like flooding, like extreme weather events, unstable slopes. You were seeing issues with food security, debris flows that would overflow into farmlands. And, given just the level of poverty in that area, the level of distress, and then you lay on top of that climate change. So what my experience in climate change, or my experience in Afghanistan, really sort of drove home for me was really that, I wasn't getting away from a war zone. I was just seeing a different face of climate change, and one through, through a community that really, these are extremely poor people, so their access to resources, all of the issues that they would have to confront, given a lack of political structure, a lack of a government structure that would be able to assist them.
It feels like there's some sort of an agency component in that too. You're describing a population that, to the extent that humans have caused climate change, those particular humans probably did little. The climate change, that's a population where climate change is happening to them rather than sort of in conjunction with their actions.
Absolutely. So that's very much what I saw, was that it was the poorest among us were carrying the greatest brunt of climate change, at least initially, right? Because we're all going to see it, and we are beginning to feel it. And so, in 2015, I was offered a job as the program lead at a land management agency here in Missoula. And again, it was, Montana showed me a different face of climate change, one where we have, extreme, fire events that are burning longer and hotter. I'm seeing situations with dams that are being subjected to environmental issues or factors that are beyond what they were actually designed for, or that they were never designed for. And I realized that, this is not, there is no getting away from climate change. It's going to be an integral part. And in my position as an engineer, working as a civil engineer, it was like watching climate change dismantle our built environment in slow motion.
Yeah.
And I think at one point, obviously I'm getting older at this point. I think at one point I looked at my portfolio and thought, well, at some point I'll be able to retire. I can do something different. And I, having not grown up with a lot of money, I was very conscientious about saving, living way below my means. And I look at my retirement account, and I'm thinking, okay, I did okay for myself. But then I had the question, which was, what is a good retirement, in an unstable climate, right? That's not a question that just I was asking, that I'm asking. It's a question that all of us are going to ask our community, our country, families, and it's like, how do you build a livable, how do you build anything if we don't have a livable future, right? Yeah. How do you build anything for the future if we don't have a livable future? Or,
And so at some point in this arc, so you're sort of contemplating retirement, you're looking at the feasibility of that, but also thinking about, as you said, like, what's this life going to look like? At what point do you arrive at, I guess the first question is, at some point you said, I need to do something about this problem that I've recognized. What was that moment?
Yeah, and I think it was sort of tied to the idea of looking at my retirement package and realizing, what is this going to look like in the future? It's like, look, I think we're all aware of, we should be, the science of climate change, and study after study has shown that, or I guess the question would be like, what did I ask, what I could do to make a change, right? I had put myself through engineering school working in restaurants. So it was my first introduction to food.
Okay.
So I understood a little bit about that. And, study after study has shown that, if you adopt more of a plant-based diet, or incorporate more plant-based foods in your diet, it can help. And again, at this time, I was thinking, mitigate the worst effects of climate change.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, why don't I, take a portion of my retirement and see if I could do something here. And so how would you do that in a place like Montana, that has a rich history of cattle and ranching.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thought was, okay, so we'll build the infrastructure locally. We'll source as much of our grain, our beans, our specialty crops from local growers. And so we get buy-in. So there's an economic incentive to want to bring online a plant-based type of business. And so that was kind of just generally my thinking behind why I thought, okay, so plant-based, we'll build the infrastructure.
Yeah.
We'll grow the product line.
And I hear two things in there. I hear this commitment to a lower impact sort of food.
Yeah.
That the plant-based diet has less of an environmental impact.
Yeah.
And then the idea of locally sourcing your ingredients. So a smaller footprint in your supply chain, if you will.
Exactly. I mean, the way I kind of imagined it was, look, so this is an interesting fact. So 45% of Americans drink plant-based milk on a regular basis.
Okay.
Right?
45.
45%.
Wow.
So that's almost half of Americans are drinking plant-based milk. And we know that likely there are people who still enjoy meat, still enjoy cheese or dairy, what have you, but are incorporating more plant-based products.
Yeah.
And when you ask them why they're doing that, they say they do it because, one, they think it's better for them, better for the environment. It tastes better, animal welfare. So those are the general facts that they give as to why they're consuming this product.
And most of those reasons run deeper than I just like the taste of it better, which is not an invalid reason. I mean, that's a good reason in your favor of your business. But if there's sort of a social motivation that exceeds the simple taste preference, that speaks to the virtue of some of the stuff you're doing as well.
Exactly. Yet, so there are about 12 plant-based milk companies in the United States.
Okay.
Right. To supply 45% of plant-based milk, or 45% of the population that consumes plant-based milk.
There's only 12.
Which is incredible. And so they're mainly concentrated on the West or the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was looking at the numbers, started to pencil out pretty quickly. If I sourced 1 pound of bean or grain locally, let's just say I could make a gallon and a half of milk.
Yeah.
Right. And so approximately that's about 13 pounds.
Yep.
So my competitor would have to produce, package, and then ship, right? That 13 pounds, where I'm buying 1 pound from the West or the East Coast, so hundreds to thousands of miles here to Montana, where we drink the product and we take their waste and put it in our waste stream. And so it's like, well, there's an obvious benefit to creating a more local source for plant-based products.
So what I'm hearing, Devin, is you had a commitment to a problem. Like, there is a large scale problem. It's going to take a lot of people working on it from a lot of different angles, but I want to be a part of that. And then, given your background and your experience and the coalescence of those variables, you see a market opportunity.
Exactly.
Right. It didn't have to be a plant-based creamery, but it just so happened that was the thing that maximized the opportunity as you saw it.
Yeah, I saw huge potential.
Yeah.
I saw huge potential.
Yeah.
And I saw, since there had already been this seismic shift with interest with plant-based milk, which is already a more sustainable product,
Mm-hmm.
why not make it even more sustainable by having it local?
Yeah. So talk about sustainable. What is that? We hear that word. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I think about it, and again, I agree, and let me ask you, I mean, I think when I hear sustainability and we talk about it, we almost have a very cynical or skeptical view when people throw around the term sustainable.
Oh man, I have a couple takes on sustainable. One that I think the environmental movement in general has been horrible about branding. Like, do you want I suppose I want a life that's sustainable at the core, but like, is that aspirational? I want a life that's awesome.
Yeah.
So sustainability kind of has like it just doesn't have the jazz from a marketing standpoint. And then outside of that, I think that it is a little it's become a political hot button like anything else. I mean, not maybe so much as other words, but
Yeah.
I still think it's a useful term. But it has become politicized.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And I think there's reasons for that because, I mean, I think there is, for a lot of manufacturers, for a lot of people who are selling products, you're in it, people use the word greenwashing, right?
Yeah.
That there's money, if I throw the word sustainability out there, and people want to support. People will support companies that are supporting or that are doing less harm to the environment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to answer the question, what is sustainability? And I think to try and answer it in the simplest way, stripping it of the sort of that market branding or what have you, sustainability is the ability to produce the product that you're producing today in the same way tomorrow, in the same way in a week from now, or even a year from now, without diminishing or taking away something that can't be replaced, right? So it's the ability to reproduce the very thing you're working on the next day.
Yeah.
So in a manufacturing sense, right? So we have equipment, we have inputs. In my case, it's agricultural inputs. I have labor, I have all the energy that's going into the operation and the creation of this product.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that I need some integrity within my supply chain. I need my equipment to be running efficiently. I need to be paying my laborers, my workers, at least a livable wage so they can reproduce that work the very next day, right? So the idea that, again, I'm maintaining or sustaining the practice in a way that is fair to everyone in that process.
I think that's a very elegant way of putting it. Talk about your first product. Like, how do you go from being somebody who's working on, decommissioning dams to making a plant-based drink or a plant-based ice cream, or like, how do you, talk about your first attempt at making a product.
Yeah. Well, I think this gets back to your point that you were making about is that when we think about sustainability or we think about what is environmentally friendly, they're almost as though there's this sort of stodginess. It's like the 1970s version of that, healthy bread, right? Or healthy, like all whole wheat bread, right? Just
sure.
It's maybe ethical, but it doesn't taste good, right? And I think that was the thing going into this is what I looked around and what I saw was, and what I experienced was that, when you're consuming a plant-based product, it's almost as though the assumption is you're willing to give up flavor to be ethical, right? Yeah. And I wanted to change that equation because I thought, look, if you taste something that's indulgent and rich and delicious, then you're not giving anything up for what you feel is ethical, right? So that what is pleasurable can can also be ethical at the same time. And so that was sort of the governing, guiding force that I used to approach the development of both our oat milk and our gelato.
I hesitate to interject this piece of history, but I think it's useful. When Tesla launched their car, Elon Musk is on record saying that I'm not out to create a great electric car. I'm out to create a great car. And the way to make a great car is to make it electric. Yeah. But that twist on, hey, I'm not just trying to make something that's as good as already exists. It just happens to be better for the environment. No, I'm trying to make a great product that's going to delight people. And it just so happens that the best way to do that is using plants.
Exactly. And I think that was the fun part of the process for me as an engineer was like, we have this problem. How are we going to go about solving it? Yeah. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place this additional constraint. We're going to say that we're going to try and grow or use product that's grown locally or regionally. And so we're going to constrain ourselves to those particular inputs and we're going to see what can we create that's delicious from that. And what's interesting is in a state like Montana, we grow oats really well.
Yeah, right? Let's talk about those inputs. So oats are a big part of the ingredient list.
And that's the main one for our oat milk.
Yeah.
And so, I sold that I've been selling our oat milk since 2022. And we launched our gelato line, a plant-based gelato line, dairy-free gelato, last August. But it took us about 2 years to develop that. And that has a little bit more of an interesting story to it because it was a strong reaction to what is currently on the market today.
Okay.
So when I first started selling oat milk, I had a customer client come to me and asked for assistance on making a plant-based ice cream. And I thought, oh, this is going to be exciting. I'm going to learn so much. I don't know really where to get started, so I'm going to hire a consultant, a food scientist, and help me kind of figure out the nuts and bolts of how to build this, and then we'll start piecing it together.
Yeah.
And so when I approached the scientist, and I had him on paid him for as a consultant. I said, okay, so I want to make a plant-based ice cream. I thought it was going to be super complicated. It was going to take hours of research. I thought it would be an expensive investment. He's like, oh yeah, no problem. And like a day later, he gives me the recipe.
Huh.
And so I call him back up and we schedule another meeting to go through it. And the thing is just chocked full of additives, right?
Oh, a bunch of chemicals and fake stuff.
Exactly. I mean, and it basically it's the fat, right? 1% fat. It's 1% pea protein. It's 1% starch, and then a bunch of other stuff in it. And I was a little surprised. I thought, I thought we'd be a little bit more creative about this. And he's like, no, this is pretty much the formulation for vegan ice cream. And so I went and I contacted a supplier of some of these ingredients. And I said, hey, could we schedule a meeting and sit down and we go through this and talk about, maybe we can make some things, adjust some things and make it a little bit better. Because we know what's on the market today doesn't taste very good.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in this meeting, and mind you, I'm the client here. I'm the customer. I want them to woo me with their great product. And I
the
tell
great
them
product being their expertise
and the additives they were going to give me.
Okay.
And I said, I'm not really impressed with what's on in terms of vegan ice cream. And this was the message I'm getting. No one's impressed with vegan ice cream, not the food scientists creating it, what have you.
Not many of the vegans.
Exactly. And they launch into this explanation of, or they just jump into this discussion, just slamming the product. And I feel like I'm now in a happy hour, where we're just trash talking, right? And I'm like, I'm completely flummoxed here because I'm coming to them saying, hey, I have this problem, let's solve it. And instead it just unleashes a sort of tirade against like the quality of vegan ice cream. I asked the question, so if nobody and the folks, you guys who are selling this stuff don't like it, why isn't anyone building a better product here? And their response was because no one's asking. And it really left me with an impression. I should go back a moment here because I then went to my customer and I said, look, here's the recipe. I'm not even going to charge you anything for this, but I'll tell you, I'm not very impressed with what we have here. And their response to me was, we don't care. Can I
curse?
Curse, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
And their response was, we don't care. It'll at least make the vegans shut the fuck up.
Okay.
And I thought, this was such a fascinating dynamic.
Wow. We
have a customer who doesn't care about the quality of the product, and the suppliers don't care either. It's almost like we're all in on the joke.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of like the diversity hire of ice creams in a way.
Yeah, well, and part of it is tied into this sort of the overarching attitude toward food in general. Yeah. And it's sort of that overarching sort of, mass manufactured food, right? Mm-hmm. We know there's a small demographic out there, this 3% of the population or so, plus or minus one. And that's who we think our target audience is. And that's who we're going to create a product for. We don't need it to be great. We're just going to create something. And since there are no alternatives, that's what they're going to have, right? And I thought, okay, at that point, I just we'll stick a pin in this. I'll come back to it. Customer's happy, whatever. I don't want anything to do with this. And then I got going, just focusing on the milk. And then I started working on a yogurt recipe. And I thought, okay, my next line is going to be yogurt. And then I think I can't remember what exactly prompted it, but I think it was just another sort of, something there was some kind of, I can't remember right now, but I had some kind of, reason that it came back to the forefront of my mind.
Okay. The ice cream.
The ice cream. And I thought, what?
And at this point, can I interject with a question? Yeah. So at this point, you sort of framed the oat milk as a relatively easy product. You get that up and running. Now you have some operational effectiveness. You're getting some reps. You probably have a revenue stream. Is the business at this point stable enough to be entertaining the idea of new products and new markets?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had the oat milk up and running, and it took about 8 months for me to really develop the recipe I wanted.
Okay.
So it took a little bit more time than I anticipated, but I landed on what I wanted.
Yeah.
But I knew, because we bottle in reusable glass bottles, there was always going to be limited footprint in which I could sell my product,
Yeah.
right? And that was just constraints in terms of distribution, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I really started to standardize that process, I realized, well, I really need to bring on a new product line. And how do I do this in a way that's using responsible packaging, consistent with our mission? And so I thought, well, yogurt is a big one, and they all package in plastic. It'd be a great entry. I'd get a great product and something, and I'd figure out the plastic issue. We'd find something else.
Got it.
And this was it. So so every year, do you know the Good Food Institute?
No.
They're back east. They're a nonprofit. They are dedicated to promoting plant-based foods, and their interest is primarily in plant-based meats. They were really big a few years ago when Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger were taking off. But every year they publish a State of the Industry report, and I was sort of flipping through that, kind of looking at which products are selling the best, and I was looking at the plant-based ice cream, and in 2022, plant-based ice cream sort of hit its peak. 2023, it dropped by about 4%. And then 2024, it dropped another 7%.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at that and I thought, well, who in their right mind would go into vegan ice cream? And of course, it brought back that whole experience that I had had with
all the cynicism from those purported experts.
Exactly. And because they were creating a crappy product. And what you saw, and this is what was fascinating when I looked at that, and I thought, I wonder if there's a different way I could read this problem. And if you look at the interest in vegan ice cream in, sort of leading up to 22 is a pretty sharp incline. And then you see this sharp decline and then another sharp decline.
Yeah.
And so what that told me was like, there is huge interest in vegan ice cream. And in 2022, consumers said, no more. We don't like what you're giving us. And they've given up on the product. And the level of drop off was significant. And that also, there was no analog within the dairy market, right? This was unique to the vegan ice cream market.
So the interest in dairy ice cream was stable.
Exactly. Whereas it wasn't in the vegan market.
Yeah.
And that was clearly, it was like as though it was finally consumers were catching up to, this is an inferior product. We don't want it anymore.
I love this, Devin, because you're looking at the data and you're telling yourself that there's an opportunity. You're concluding that there's an opportunity where others are probably like, oh, this is a dying market. We're getting out. So you're seeing an opportunity where others are seeing none.
If I could create something different, right? If I reproduced exactly what was on the market today, it's like the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over, expecting a different result. What I saw was huge interest and disappointment. If I can at least bring back a fraction of those disappointed, or even if I could catch the wave of people still interested, there would be significant reward for that.
Yeah. So how do you do it?
And that was exactly it. So the question was, well, let's rethink this equation altogether. What makes a vegan ice cream, or a dairy-free ice cream, or what makes a dairy ice cream for that matter really good? Well, it's the creaminess. What analog would there be in the plant-based world that gives you the kind of creaminess that you need that would be satisfying? And then, again, with the constraints of what can we produce locally? What can we use locally? It's like potatoes. I mean, right? Potatoes are by nature. And if you look at the genetic, sort of the history of potatoes, they were almost evolved perfectly to be an ice cream, right? So it's like, well, let's start. We're going to get the creaminess from the potatoes. We need protein to build the scaffolding. And then we need liquid to provide the moisture, right? Or the liquid component of the ice cream. And so it took us a few years of back and forth playing, iteration after permutation, right? And we started finally getting that perfect blend, that mix. And we're seeing really promising results. And it's like, I think we've got an gelato here. And I remember I called up, and still not understanding the science exactly, right? I just know that these different components are making something very good. And it's important to stress that all of these ingredients are ingredients that you can make or get from your local grocery store. So there's nothing, no additives, nothing. It's all what's pretty readily accessible. So I've got this great product. We're using just kind of like a podunk little ice cream maker that I bought from like Target or something,
Sure.
right? So we're still having issues in terms of the equipment. And I called up like 3 or 4 different food scientists and, across the country. And then I actually got a hold of a guy in Manchester, England. And I said, hey, I asked each one of them, here's my recipe. Here's what I'm doing. Tell me where my bust is, right? Tell me where I'm going to see this thing blow up in my face.
Sure.
And I remember the guy from Manchester who's worked all over the world, he kind of rolled his eyes a little bit, but he said, look, what you need to do at this point is you need to get as much money as you can and buy the nicest gelato maker that you can afford. And then you're going to take your mix and you're going to run it through that machine. And if it comes out crumbly, call me. But if it comes out okay, you're golden.
Okay. So it was a machinery problem, not an ingredients problem.
Well, it was what he was saying was that's the first test, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you if it's a bust if it crumbles on you.
Okay.
But if it comes out creamy, you're doing something right.
All right.
So I went and got 2 zero-interest credit cards and found someone who would let me pay for a really nice gelato maker using these 2 cards. It was like one was like an 18-month interest-free.
Sure.
One was 12 months.
Yeah, you just went for it.
And we brought it in and we put the batch through and it just came out beautiful. And I remember one of my employees said to me as we're sampling it, she said, wow, I think we've created something new here.
Yeah.
And I was like,
beautiful.
Yeah, this is great. And of course, we've tweaked it and adjusted it and worked on it since,
Yeah.
and we're still making improvements. But what I saw was like, this is an incredible product. And the feedback we've gotten from people who've tried our product is they can't tell it's dairy free.
Yeah.
And what it did not only was help me create a great product, but it changed the way I looked at how I want to create vegan or plant-based foods in the future, right? It's not, and I can tell you exactly why, that formulation that they have exists in the way it does, right? But that formulation doesn't work, right? It's it's looking at food as if you were an ethnobotanist, right? As if you were a botanist looking at the history, the culture, how it evolved over time, and then taking the attributes that it has evolved to do and applying it in a way that is best suited.
Sure.
And so it was just like it had opened up a whole new world to me of looking at how to create delicious, incredible plant-based foods.
Yeah. And as you were telling that story, I was thinking of, my experience with the samples you brought in so generously for me to taste before we started recording. And the product is delightful, is delicious. I want to frame this the right way. Like it is distinctive in the sense that the comparison to ice cream didn't even come to mind. Because I think people are tempted to, when they're a new consumer in the category, to say, "Is this as good as good ice cream?"
Yeah.
And I didn't even have that impetus. It's like, no, this is a distinctive, wonderful experience. So I think that speaks to, or that might my experience sort of reflects a lot of the design ethic that it sounded like you were recounting there.
Interesting. I mean, and part of that may be that it is a gelato. It's most similar to a gelato.
Yeah.
Right, which is a milk-based frozen dessert, where ice cream is a fat-based frozen dessert. So that could be distinct because of the way fat sits on the tongue as you're eating it is very distinct from a milk-based product.
Okay.
Which is why gelato the flavors tend to be much brighter and more intense.
Yes.
Whereas a fat-based ice cream, it's delightful, but the fat coats the tongue, so it sort of tempers the flavor a little bit. So
you land on the product.
Yeah.
And then what happens next? You talk about distribution, talk about how readily, talk about that side of the equation.
So, I mean, the next thing was like, okay, so how are we going to package this thing, right? So finding the right packaging. And we were able to locate a 100% backyard compostable, certified plastic-free package. And it was like, sweet, we meet all of our objectives, right? We create an incredibly delicious product and the package is sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it's doing for us as a company right now is it now opens up the possibility of where we can get our product, where we can send our product, and where we can sell it. And so right now we are very much in the growth phase of the company. We're gearing up for that. So, we're going through the process of working through the logistics, the workflow, which, the different components of the equipment to streamline and increase efficiency
Yep.
in production. So my hope is, as we sort of work through those bugs this year, by 2027, we're off and running.
Yeah. How do you think about pricing? Because that's an important part of sustainability in the sense that you want your product to be accessible and available to as many people as possible.
Yeah. And that's certainly, so we're definitely more of an expensive product.
Mm-hmm.
And again, part of that is we're operating at a much smaller scale. So that means the inputs we're buying are more expensive than, say a competitor like Oatly, right? They're buying at a much, much larger scale. So they benefit from the economies of scale. So that's a huge factor for any small operation. We pay for compostable packaging, right? That is more expensive. It's not, there's a certain range that you should be paying for packaging, and ours is definitely at that upper range. The other struggle with that is to get it to be within a reasonable price frame, I have to buy a large amount at one time. So I'm tying up my capital for that. So that's lost opportunity there, right, in terms of investment. And this is the same thing with our oat milk is, yes, our focus is sustainability. There's always just a higher price tag to that. Where we can recoup that is really focusing on the efficiency, right? Really streamlining the process. What's fascinating is that the process of streamlining our manufacturing, building more efficiency within our operations, within our equipment, is pretty much in line with our environmental stewardship, right? So they're all kind of one and the same. And so we developed or figured out how much we were going to charge for our ice cream based on what it took to make it at the time I started it.
Mm-hmm.
We've built in so much more efficiency since then. So that really does open up some possibilities for us on how do we want to lower the price? Do we want to just do more frequent sales? Do we, right now there's obviously, as you're well aware of, lots of turmoil, instability in the supply chain, fuel, all of those things.
Yes.
Climate change is impacting agricultural inputs as well. So the price of cocoa, the instability in the cocoa market, in the coffee market, all of those things. Mm-hmm. So do we hold tight and just let any of those additional prices absorb those increases and stay steady so that we're not having to increase our price? So we're just building some factors of safety in while things get just a little crazy or are crazy for right now.
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable balance. How do you make decisions about what you say yes to and what you say no to? So you've kind of zeroed in on some principles of sustainability and what you think, is good for the environment and bad for the environment, et cetera. But how do you conceptualize guardrails in your organization?
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, I'm very protective about the process we go through. Because quality, to me, in my mind, I think when a consumer thinks about sustainability, right, the measure in which they think about sustainability, they're not looking at my risk and benefit analysis, right? They don't see the inner workings of my operation. So their rubric is through quality. It's through taste.
Yeah.
And if I compromise on taste, right, impact my quality, right, that may indicate a deterioration in our sort of me moving away from my commitment from sustainability. Yeah. So flavor and sustainability, quality, innovation, they're all sort of tied in one. And that's sort of my guiding North Star.
Yeah, they're co-equals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in order to maintain that, my sort of guardrails are, we can't overextend ourselves. We can't overpromise and underdeliver. I don't want to stress my staff, right? There's no reason to. And so, as part of this process of developing the workflow is like checking with my staff. We have meetings weekly where we sit down and go, what worked, what didn't, what are the hangups, where are the pinch points in this process, and let's get the equipment or what have you to solve those. This is why we're taking that year to really work out that process so that when I go to a larger purchaser, I can say, yes, we can do that, or no, we can't. I can give them some reasonable numbers that I feel comfortable with and that I know won't compromise my ability to produce the same consistent, delicious result.
Right. So what are your hopes and dreams? Like if you could define success at some eventual exit for you?
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Right now I'm so in the throes of just
Yeah.
developing it. It's hard to think, what does it look like on the other side? I guess I come back to the idea that I started this business. I started the idea of starting a plant-based milk company largely driven by climate anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel so motivated by what's the next thing we can do? And I think, we'll create more plant-based products, but I think I also need to think about how to grow the company laterally. What are some components that we can control that build some resiliency and redundancy within our food system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think of grain processing, building that capacity in house. And how would I do that given, I'm one person who runs this company, right? I don't know. Do you know Zierman's Deli in Michigan?
I don't.
They have a deli in Michigan. It's this two guys. They own this company, and they are wildly popular. And maybe they've been around now for 20 something years. I forget at this point. But what they did is they decided, well, we don't want a franchise. We want to just keep building stronger and stronger. And what they did was, they knew at some point there was an exit point for them. They had to write the end of the script for themselves. And they thought, well, how do we position our employees? How do we build their wealth so they can buy us out? And how they structured the growth of their company was they said, okay, look, we're a deli. We need bread. How about if we help one of our managers put some skin in the game? They put, say, 20% toward this bakery, and we put in 80%. We provide the training, and then we give them a dedicated customer. So we're always going to buy our bread from you.
Yeah.
So you have this known quantity. You can sell to anyone else, but at least you have a starting customer.
Mm-hmm.
And then they grow this company. And so they're helping grow the wealth of their employees.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to mimic that model.
Have some analog to that.
Exactly. Yeah. So would we have a gelato shop? Would we have, a dedicated, maybe a cheese operation?
Cones.
Exactly.
Somebody's going to make cones for this beautiful ice cream that you have.
Packaging. There's so many different components. Grain processing. That's very aspirational, but I think if I could at the end, if I could walk away from it saying, yeah, we've got this, we've built this system that is extremely resilient and that, we're all benefiting from.
Well, you get these spin-off effects that compound your impact.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful sentiment.
Exactly.
Yeah. If folks want to get some of your product, where would you send them?
We're located at many different places. You can go to our website and you can see where we're listed.
Okay. Widely available in Montana?
In Missoula, we're now in Bozeman, we're up in Whitefish, Kalispell, and I think we're going to be in Helena soon and in Butte as well.
Wonderful. Devin, tell us about the last time you changed your mind.
Yeah. So you sent that to me and I was thinking about it. And it's interesting because right now I'm reading this book, Plastic Ink. It's a new book, came out. Do you know the book?
I've heard the title, but I've not read it.
Yeah, Beth Gardner. It's a good book, and it's really got me thinking. And it's interesting. Again, it's the idea of how the plastic industry has grown,
mm-hmm.
And she makes a really good point, which is we often think about how do we use less plastic or no plastic? How can we get to a plastic-free world? And her point is that we're asking the wrong question, right? And that how do we use less plastic? And something that just piqued my interest or made me think about this was, plastic does have a function, right? Plastic makes cars lighter, airplanes lighter, which means a lighter vehicle or a lighter airplane means less CO2 in the environment, mm-hmm. CO2 emissions. We know that single-use plastics in the medical industry can provide a benefit, right? Yeah. They reduce contamination, they stop the spread of disease. The world benefits from the use of plastic in these components. But there's not a single benefit from using plastic in a perishable product, right? Why should the world does not need, 6 apples or even a pint of gelato, right? Packaged in plastic, an item that will last how long in exchange for a piece of plastic that lasts 450 years, right? Yeah. So I think we have to be honest to say, yes, there is a place for plastic, but there isn't a place for plastic everywhere, and certainly not in a food manufacturing operation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I came more from that mindset of, how do we live in a plastic-free world?
Sure. You were dogmatic about plastics,
Exactly.
and now you have a more sort of nuanced view, but one that's probably in line with making progress more effective.
Yeah, and I think it's accounting for doing a risk and benefit analysis, and like, do we need an eraser that's wrapped in plastic or packaged in plastic and sold to us? Do we need a pencil? And I think it doesn't make the world a better place.
Right. Well, that seems like a great place to end it. Devin, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, learning the Cool Earth story. And I wish you all the best. I hope you can share the story down the road with us and see what other spin-off enterprises that you and your colleagues have created down the road.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for listening to A New Angle. If you like what we do and want to support us directly, please consider a subscription at anewanglepodcast.com. A New Angle is recorded at Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. Our presenting sponsor is the Headwaters Foundation, working side by side with Western Montanans to improve the health of our communities. We are also supported by First Security Bank and the University of Montana College of Business, with additional help from CED, Drum Coffee, and Montana Public Radio. Keely Larson is our producer. Libby Riddle is our production assistant. And finally, John Brownell, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.